Mrs. Brown here, going to tell you how to make a histogram using data that is just the frequencies. Here I have some data. It's the number of phone calls handled per day by a call center employee, and I have several data values here for that person. And what I want to do is figure out a nice set of boundaries for a histogram. So I want to see what is the count, how many items do I have. So to do that I say equals, and there's a function in Excel that does the count for you. It's called count. So you put count and then left parenthesis, and then I'm going to come over to where my data is, click on my first data item, and then I'll do Control Shift and the down arrow. That's going to select all my data values for me in that column, and it'll stop at the last data value in the column. So far I can see up here I have count A2 to A71, and then I can put a right parenthesis and push enter. And now if I scroll up a little bit, it says I have 70 data items, and that makes sense because I was at 72. Then I want to know the minimum. Again, Excel has a function for that. So I'll say equals min, left parenthesis, and that tells Excel I want you to calculate the minimum. Again, click on your top data item, and then Control Shift down arrow. That's going to select all of my data. And there it put in the right parenthesis for me and came up with 5 as the smallest data value that I have. I want to find the maximum, so same thing, equals max, left parenthesis, and select your first data item, Control Shift down arrow, and push enter. And it tells me that my largest value is 66. Now to find the range, I simply take the largest minus the smallest, so I'll say equals again, and then click on where I have the 66, type in the minus, and then click on where I have the 5. That way if I happen to add data or anything like that, it'll still calculate the proper range automatically. So I took a short break and I changed the order of the last two items on the screen from, I just switched the order, so it was number of bins, width of bins, so I changed it to width of bin, number of bins. To find the width of a bin, that's some number that I just decide how wide I think I want my bins. I know my data is going from 5 to 66, and I'm going to need about 61 divisions of data across, so I'm thinking a size of 5 is reasonable for the width of a bin. So I'll push 5 there, and then to find out how many bins I need, I just need to do division. So equals, I'm going to take how many intervals I need, 61, divided by the width of the bin, or the 5. And then push equals. That gives me 12.2, so it's telling me I'll need 12 and a little bit more. 13 is probably a good number for the number of bins. Starting at 0, and if I'm having a width of 5, it'll be 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and so on, all the way up to 65 to 70, because my highest value I can see right here is a 66. So I'll need to have a bin that's going to contain that. The upper bound of the bins we need for Excel for the histogram function, because that's how it calculates for histograms and compiles your data for you. So I need the highest number that I could put into this interval, 0 to 5. Remember on a histogram that the upper bound by convention is not included. It's included on the next interval. So if I had a data value of 5, it should not go into the 0 to 5 bin. It should go into the 5 to 10 bin. And that's a convention we use with histograms. So that means since my data is discrete, I'm not going to have 4.5 calls received in a day. I'm going to have 4 or 5. The upper bound of the smallest bin is going to be 4. So my upper bound is going to be a 4 for this first bin. The next bin is 5 to 10, but not including 10, so the upper bound for that bin will be 9. And we will be following that same pattern as we go down, so I can take those first two numbers I entered and drag them down, and they should give me one shy of the total, the top number for each of my bins. Now these, like I said, these are the numbers I need for Excel to do the histogram. So I'm going to I'll come here and click Data, and I should see a data analysis tool pack right here, and I don't see it. So I'm going to come over to File and Options, and then it's an add-in to Excel. So I'll go to the add-ins, and down here Manage Add-ins, and then I want this analysis tool pack, so I'll say OK. Click on that. So I want to use the data analysis tool pack from Excel, and it's on the data screen, the data tab. So if I push data all the way to the right, I should see data analysis. That's the one I want to use. So I'll click on the data analysis, and it gives me several options of what I could use, different tools I could use. I want the histogram, so I'll click on that, and then I'll tell it OK. The input range, that's where my data is, so I'll click on the right hand side so I can select it from my sheet. Then I'll click on the top value, and I'll use Control Shift down arrow, and that should select all of my data, and you can see here that it's gone A2 to A71. Click on the right hand part again, and then the bin range, that's where the bins that I just made, that's where I need those. And so I'll select on those. You can do Control Shift down arrow again to select them all, or just select it, it's a small range. And then labels would be if I had included the labels in my selection, and I did not, so I don't need to check that. And I do want it to put the histogram information on a new worksheet, so I'll leave that button checked. And then I'll just say OK. So here it's gone to a new sheet. I was on sheet 1, and now it added on a sheet 4 for me here. This one has my bins that I had given, and the frequency, how many days had calls with the given number in for the range for my bin. So the bins are the ranges of calls, the intervals. So I have like 0 to 5, remember, was this first one. And what I'm going to do, just to make it a little easier to look at, is come back to my first sheet and select those intervals that I had, that I came up with the upper bounds for, and I'll do Control C to copy, and then I'm going to the new sheet, which was sheet 4, and I'll do Control V to paste. So now I have the full interval here, and then I have, this is the upper bound, remember that's what Excel wanted, the upper bound of the bin, and then the frequency. So for days that had between 0 and 5 callers, there were no days. Days that had between 5 and 10 callers, there were 7 days. So that's what this frequency histogram is telling me. So I'll select my frequencies, and the last thing that I have here is, if I can get this thing to move, it says more underneath there, and I don't need that because I have this last category here is the final one that has data. So delete that line because it'll mess up if I use that more. Then for the frequency column, I'll select that, and now I want to create a histogram, so I'll say Insert and Column, just pick the first 2D column chart. And this is not a histogram, it's a bar chart, but I can make it into a histogram. I'm going to click on it, and I'm looking for the layout. It says Layout 8. You might be able to see that there, so I'll click on that. It's going to change my chart a little bit. And now it looks more like a bar chart because I'm going from one end of the interval to the other before I go to the next piece of data. I do have to do a little bit of tweaking, and I'll do that right now. I click on the chart, right click, and I'm going to Format Data Series, and then the border color, because it's not showing, it's a little distracting because it looks like big blobs, so I'm going to put Solid Line and change the color to black. and change the color to black, and then I'm going to close. Now when I click on somewhere else, you can see my distinct rectangles there for the bars. That looks a lot better. My chart title, I can click on the title, and then I just need to put a title. I don't have to erase or anything. It'll automatically do that for me. So I can type in my chart title should be calls, and then when I push enter, it just updates. So I didn't have to erase it all. So I want to figure out the axis titles, and it's just a bit tricky because we're doing a histogram from original data. So in the interval 0 to 5, that means how many days had 0 to 5 calls. And we can see it was a frequency of 0. In this interval 5 to 10, that means how many days had between 5 and 10 calls, and you can see 7 days had that. So if I'm going to label my x-axis, that should be the call volume. That should be the call volume. And if I'm going to label my y-axis, that's the number of days that had that particular call volume. So how many days, that's what we're stacking in our histogram. So you want to think through that a little bit. So I have my y-axis labeled, I have my x-axis labeled. I don't have the right numbers here, so I want to fix that next. So if I click somewhere on my graph and then right click, I'm going to come here to select data. So I will select the data, and I need a horizontal, I want these horizontal axis labels. So I'll click edit. And then I need to select where my labels actually are, and it's these intervals here. So I just select that whole interval and then click back on my sheet and say OK, and then I'm finished there. If I stretch things out a little bit more, particularly from the left to the right, I should be able to see my labels there. I may also want to, instead of putting 0 to 5, 5 to 10 like that, I may also want to put the interval or the midpoint like we usually show, and we can do that by just creating the interval. So I can come here, insert. I would like to know what is the exact midpoint. So this first one, for some reason it didn't want to calculate. Oh, I think because I told it this was text. Let's put it as a number. So I'll select this column, change it to a number, just a number with 2 decimal places. Zero plus 5 divided by 2. There we go, finally. Okay, so 250. I had to convert so that it was actually using numbers, and I might have had an error in there too. The exact midpoint of 5 to 10 is going to be, try this again, equals 5 plus 10 divided by 2, or 7.5. I should be able to drag these. Nope. So I keep thinking I can drag them, but I can't. But I do know that the exact midpoint of 10 to 15 is going to be 12.5, which is just 5 higher than the 7.5. So I'm just going to do it that way. And I'll say equals, click on this 750, add 5 to it, and that gives me the 1250. This I should be able to drag down and have it add 5 every time. So the midpoint, I'll check my highest one to be sure it worked. Between 65 and 70, the midpoint is 6750. That looks correct to me. Last thing, let's put that onto my histogram. So I'll click on the histogram, and I'm going to select data again. And for my axis, my horizontal axis, click edit again. I want to select it from, instead of the interval, I want the midpoint this time, and then I'll click back here tell it OK, OK again, and there, now I have it with just the midpoint instead of the entire interval. Those are squeezed together too much, so I'll just stretch it out just a little bit. And I think in addition, I would like to change this to have fewer decimal places, and there's a little button here, decrease decimal. So I'll show it as one fewer, and that fits even a little better on my chart. You can see it updated automatically. Select the chart, use Control C, and then I can open a Word document and use Control V to paste it, and there it is in a Word document ready for your report. Another thing that might be helpful for you for your classes is to be able to copy and paste your spreadsheets, one view with the formulas showing and one view with the data showing. So the view that we have right here is with my data showing, so I would select whatever I wanted to print, and I'm going to select all the way across like that so that I get all of my data. Now I can do Control C on the Excel sheet as well. Go into a Word document and do Control V. That'll paste it. It's going to show all my data. It's not laid out really prettily. You'll have to work on that yourself. And then the other thing I can do is go back to my Excel sheet, and now I can do the formula view. So to do the formula view, I don't have to have anything selected, but I push Control and then the tilde key, which is to the left of the number 1 on your keyboard. And it will show me any formulas that I have, it will show as a formula. So there's a couple of formulas there that I used. Oh, it's giving me super wide columns here. Okay, and then I can do the same thing where I select it. I'm going to try Control Shift down arrow. It selects my whole set of data. Control C, and go to your file, and this is the view with the formulas. I pasted it. The data is not changed, so that may not be something you actually want to paste. I can adjust my columns just a little bit here if I need to, but the things I was really interested in were these formulas here, and you can see that they've come through as formulas, whereas the first time that I did them, they came through with just the values when I did my copy and paste. Okay, so you can do it either way. Come back to my spreadsheet. I know on my other sheet I had some other formulas, so I came to the second sheet, and I'm going to do Control tilde, and it's showing all my data again, and there's not very much, but here's the formulas that I had entered for those midpoints. So if you wanted to copy that as well, you could do that. Control C to copy, find the end of your string here, and Control V, there's my table. I can insert a new page and see my bin and frequency table there. Remember to copy your graph, you just click on it, anywhere on it, Control C, go into your Word document, and Control V. This one needs to be stretched out just a bit, so I'll do that. And there we are.